let's break the chain. Overcome this beast of pain. One more rep, one more try. Feel the power rise so high. Wounds are deep, but strength is near. In this room, leave behind your fear. Rise again, bend not bow. Trust this road, we walk it now. Grit your teeth, let's break the chain. Overcome this beast of pain. One more, let one try. Feel the power rise so high. Grit your teeth, let's break the chain. Overcome this beast of pain. One more rep, one more try. Feel the power rise so high. Broken pieces, stitch them tight. In this war we'll claim the fight. Bone to bone and heart to heart. Rebuild strength and never part.
Okay, so have you ever tried to explain what your pain feels like?
It's kind of tough, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how do you put that into words?
But figuring that out is the first step to actually treating it.
Okay.
And that's what we're going to be diving deep into today.
You sent us this really interesting research on pain assessment and diagnosis.
Yeah.
So let's unpack it together.
Okay, sounds good.
You've walked into a doctor's office and you're trying to explain my shoulder feels like a rusty robot trying to do the Macarena.
And it's really hard to put that into words. You know what I mean?
You're exactly right. It is tough to put pain into words.
Yeah.
And that's why pain is subjective.
There's no one single test that can tell us exactly what somebody is experiencing.
Okay.
Which is why, doctors have to be like pain detectives.
Oh.
And they have to use this whole toolkit of methods to try to understand what's going on.
And I'm seeing some pretty wild stuff in this research.
Yeah.
It's not just rate your pain on a scale of 1 to 10.
They've got these questionnaires, like the McGill Pain Questionnaire.
Right.
And they use such vivid language.
Right.
Instead of just saying it hurts, it'll be is it throbbing? Is it shooting? Is it sickening?
Right. Whoa.
Well, it's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these questionnaires, they're really trying to bridge that gap between what you're feeling internally and how do you actually express that.
Which is critical for doctors to really understand the nature of the pain.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember words are only one part of that.
Okay.
We also use more what we call objective measures.
Things you remember at the doctor's office and they get out the range of motion things?
Yeah, like the protractor.
I always feel like I'm back in geometry class. What's happening?
Exactly.
But those tools, while helpful, only tell one side of the story. Right?
That's exactly right. It's not just about, how far can you move a joint? It's how does that pain actually affect your ability to move through the world?
Yeah.
And we call these functional assessments.
Okay.
For example, a really simple test is what we call the timed up and go test.
Which is basically we measure how long does it take for you to stand up from a chair,
Oh, okay.
walk a short distance, and sit back down.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense, especially if your pain is interfering with you just doing daily life.
Exactly.
But let's talk about the pain itself.
It seems like there are different types of pain, right?
You're absolutely right. I mean, think about it this way.
If you say sharp, that's helpful.
Yeah.
But it doesn't tell the whole story.
One of the really important distinctions that we make is between something called musculoskeletal pain
Okay.
and neuropathic pain.
So musculoskeletal pain is kind of what we typically think of.
When we think about a pulled muscle
Right.
or even arthritis,
Mm.
that aching, throbbing sensation.
Okay, got it. So then neuropathic pain is?
Neuropathic pain is kind of like a glitch in the nervous system.
A glitch.
Yeah, it's caused by damage or dysfunction in the nerves themselves.
And so you experience these shooting, burning, electric-like sensations
What?
because essentially your nerves are sending kind of faulty signals to the brain.
Oh, yeah.
That's what neuropathic pain is.
So if musculoskeletal pain is I've sprained my ankle,
Yeah,
then neuropathic pain is more like the nerves are sending a busy signal.
that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And a lot of times with that, you can have other weird sensations like tingling or numbness
Oh, wow.
or even that pins and needles.
Okay. Speaking of weird sensations, one of the articles that you sent talked about sciatica. and it described how a herniated disc can press on the sciatic nerve.
And then it causes that shooting pain all the way down your leg.
Right.
Is that an example of neuropathic pain?
It is. Sciatica is a classic example of that.
Okay.
And it really highlights why it's so important to understand these different types of pain.
Because the treatment for a pulled muscle is going to be very different than the treatment for nerve pain.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
There's this term in the research that I found really intriguing.
Yeah.
It's called central sensitization.
Okay.
And it's basically like your brain's pain volume gets stuck on high.
Even after an injury heals, like what's going on there?
It's a really interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, imagine you have a car alarm
Okay.
that keeps going off even after like the threat is gone.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of what happens with central sensitization.
Oh.
Your nervous system basically gets stuck in pain mode.
Okay.
So it keeps amplifying those pain signals
Right.
even when there's no longer any actual tissue damage.
Wow. Okay. That's actually a really helpful analogy.
So even though like the injury itself might be healed,
Right.
the brain is still sending out those like, hey, something's wrong messages.
Exactly. And this is why it's so important to understand central sensitization, because it highlights how pain isn't just this physical experience.
Right.
It's also influenced by our nervous system,
Oh, wow.
our thoughts, our emotions.
So it's almost like pain is a symphony, not just like a single instrument playing.
I like that. That's a really good analogy.
And just like a conductor needs to understand all the instruments
Right.
to create this like harmonious sound,
Yeah.
a doctor needs to really consider all aspects of your experience to really understand and address your pain.
Okay. So we've talked about the tools that doctors use to assess pain.
Right.
We've talked about these different types of pain.
But how do they put all this together to actually diagnose what's going on?
It really is like putting together a puzzle.
Okay.
And it starts with taking a really thorough medical history.
Okay.
This is where we really get clues about the pain story.
Okay.
When did it start? What makes it better or worse?
Right.
What other symptoms are you experiencing?
So it's like those detective shows, where they're like, can you describe the pain?
Right, exactly.
And the person's like, well, it feels like a burning elephant is sitting on my head.
Hopefully the descriptions are a little more clear than that.
Oh, yeah, a little more detail than that, yeah.
But you get the idea. Like, those specifics are really crucial. We need to know, like, what are we dealing with here?
Absolutely.
So after you do, like, the patient interview...
Was it straight to, like, X-rays and MRIs?
So imaging studies like X-rays and MRIs can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember they're just one piece of the puzzle.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
So you're saying you can have a scan that shows damage,
Right.
but you might not actually be feeling any pain.
Exactly, yeah. For example, you might have an MRI that shows you have a bulging disc in your lower back.
Right.
A lot of people have bulging discs, and they have absolutely no symptoms at all.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of like having a dent in your car.
Okay.
It might not affect how the car drives.
Okay, that's actually kind of reassuring,
Yeah.
but also a little confusing, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Because then how do you know if it is actually the source of someone's pain?
Right. And that's where the art of medicine comes in.
We have to interpret those imaging results
Yeah.
in the context of everything else we know.
Right.
The patient's history,
Okay.
their physical exam findings, their lifestyle.
Even their psychological state.
So it's not just what the image shows,
Right.
but what it means for that specific person.
Exactly.
Their age, previous injuries, like all that factors in.
Precisely. And ultimately, the goal of treatment isn't just to
Fix an image.
Right.
It's to improve your function,
Yeah.
your ability to move, to work,
Right.
to do the things that you love to do.
So it's about getting back to living your life, not just being pain-free
Exactly.
in a vacuum.
Right.
Okay, this is all making so much more sense now.
But you know what would really bring it home for me? Examples.
Okay, sure.
Can we dive into some of those case studies that you mentioned?
Absolutely. Let's switch into full-on detective mode here,
Okay.
and we'll see how all this plays out
Let's do it.
in real life.
Okay.
So our first case is classic. We have a 45-year-old office worker
Wait.
experiencing low back pain.
Oh,
I mean, this is something so many people can relate to.
definitely. I think I just threw my back out thinking about my to-do list the other day. What's our patient's story?
So this individual has been experiencing this gradual onset
Okay.
of low back pain. It's worse with prolonged sitting.
Especially when they're hunched over a computer.
Oh, yeah.
Bending forward also makes it worse.
Right?
And during the physical exam, They had limited flexibility
Okay.
in their lower back, especially when trying to like straighten up.
So those are some important clues right there. It sounds like certain movements really set off those pain alarm bells.
Exactly.
What else did their physical exam, reveal?
So they tested positive for something that we call the straight leg raise test, which is basically you lift the leg up, keeping it straight.
Okay.
And it can be an indicator of pressure on the sciatic nerve.
Uh-huh. So even though the case study doesn't explicitly say sciatica,
Right.
that test result kind of gives us a little clue.
Exactly.
Especially because we learned earlier that sciatica is often caused by a herniated disc pressing on that nerve.
That's right.
So we're like, interesting.
And remember, we always want to consider the whole picture.
Right.
Their age, their occupation, prolonged sitting can do a number on your back.
Oh, yeah.
And those specific movements that are triggering their pain
Right.
all kind of point us towards this potential disc-related issue.
Wow, this really is like detective work.
It is.
We're just piecing together all these clues to understand what's going on.
Exactly.
What's our next case?
All right, next up we have a 60-year-old retired tennis player
Oh.
dealing with chronic shoulder pain.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm an expert at sleeping on my shoulder wrong.
Like, what's going on with our tennis player's shoulder?
So this one highlights how specific physical tests can really help us pinpoint the problem.
Okay.
So for instance, this person has pain with overhead activities, which is really common with shoulder issues.
Right.
But we also found that he had weakness and pain during a test that we call resisted external rotation.
Which is basically he has trouble rotating his arm outward when we gently push against it.
And that's probably not something that you want to be struggling with as a tennis player.
No, not at all.
That's got to be tough.
Yeah.
Did that specific test, point to a particular diagnosis?
It did. That weakness combined with a positive result on something we call the empty can test.
The empty can test.
Where you hold your arms out to the side like you're holding two empty cans.
Rotate your arms down slightly and then try to raise them up against resistance.
Okay.
Really strongly suggests a problem with what we call the rotator cuff.
Okay, so for those of us who don't speak anatomy,
Right.
what exactly is the rotator cuff?
So think of the rotator cuff as this group of muscles and tendons that surround the shoulder joint.
And their job is to help stabilize the shoulder. So they help you rotate and lift your arm.
Okay.
And they keep everything moving smoothly.
So they're like the pit crew of your shoulder.
That's a great way to put it.
They're making sure everything stays in place and runs efficiently.
Exactly. And in this case, it sounds like our tennis player's pit crew might need a little attention.
Right. They might be a little overworked. They might need a little TLC.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's interesting because not every shoulder pain case is a rotator cuff problem.
Exactly. Not at all.
So that's where those hands-on assessments are so important.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've tackled a back case. We've tackled a shoulder case.
Right.
What's our final medical mystery?
Our last case is probably the most intriguing because it involves what we call widespread pain.
Ooh. Oh, yeah.
So not just in one particular body part.
Okay.
And it really emphasizes the importance of looking beyond the obvious.
Widespread pain, that already sounds more complicated than the other ones.
Right.
Because it's not just one spot that's hurting. So what is the patient experiencing?
So we have a 35-year-old woman.
Okay.
She's experiencing pain throughout her body.
Along with fatigue.
So right away,
Yeah.
that's like two symptoms that were like, okay, this is more complex
Right.
than just a sprained ankle. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Were there any clues about what might be causing it?
That's the thing. Her medical history.
Didn't reveal any obvious injuries or underlying conditions.
Really?
And here's where it gets interesting. Despite the pain being so widespread.
Her physical exam was largely normal.
Wait, normal.
Yes.
So like normal range of motion, no red flags during the physical exam.
Right.
But she's having pain all over.
Yes.
That doesn't add up.
You're right.
It doesn't track.
And to add another layer.
The case study mentions that imaging studies didn't show any significant findings either.
What?
So we have a patient who's in a significant amount of pain, but the usual suspects, it's
Right.
like a clear injury or a structural abnormality,
Yeah.
aren't there?
So what do you do?
This is like, whoa, it's a real medical mystery.
It is.
Because we're so used to being like, if it shows up on the scan, then that's the problem.
Right.
But this case is like flipping that on its head a little bit.
Exactly. And this is where, our understanding of different pain mechanisms becomes so important.
Right.
Because remember how we talked about central sensitization,
Yeah.
where your nervous system basically gets stuck in overdrive?
Right, like that car alarm, that's going off even though there's no threat?
Exactly.
Are we thinking that's what's happening in this case?
It's a very strong possibility.
Okay.
Remember, central sensitization, it often involves this really widespread pain
Yeah.
that just seems completely out of proportion
Yeah.
to any physical findings. Plus, it's frequently accompanied by,
Other symptoms like fatigue,
Yeah.
sleep problems, mood changes.
right, which this case study mentions.
Right, exactly.
So it's like your body is sending out this distress signal.
Yeah.
But the source of the distress is not always like this clear-cut thing.
Deep
There's so
signal.
many other factors that play.
Absolutely. And while diagnosing conditions like fibromyalgia,
Right.
which, is often linked to central sensitization, can be challenging.
Right.
It's so important to recognize
Yeah.
that a lack of objective findings
Yeah.
doesn't make the pain any less real for the person experiencing it.
That's such a good point, because it's like, just because we can't see it
Exactly.
doesn't mean that you're not feeling it.
Exactly. And it highlights the need for a much more
Holistic approach, I think,
Yes.
to pain management.
Yeah.
One that really considers not just the physical,
right.
but the psychological and the emotional aspects as well.
These case studies have been incredible.
They're really interesting, right?
We went from the textbook to whoa, this is how this actually happens
Yeah.
out in the real world.
And for anyone listening who's thinking, okay, this is all fascinating, but what does this mean for me?
Right.
What would you say are the biggest takeaways?
That's the million-dollar question. What have we learned today that people can use in their own lives?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's just remembering that pain is complex.
Right.
It's not just a physical sensation.
Right.
It's this really multifaceted experience
Yeah.
that's influenced by our biology, our experiences, our environment, even our emotions.
Yeah, it's almost like that saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Yeah.
You can't always control when you experience pain, but you can learn to change how you respond to it.
Exactly. And that kind of leads to a second big takeaway,
Okay.
which is that diagnosis is a process. It's not a single event, right?
Right.
It requires gathering all the pieces of the puzzle,
Yeah.
not just relying on one test or one scan.
So if you're experiencing pain, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Absolutely.
Advocate for yourself. Find those healthcare providers that will really listen to your story
Absolutely.
and take that holistic approach
Exactly.
because you deserve that.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the big takeaway.
Right.
Knowledge is power.
It is.
The more you understand about pain,
Yes.
how it works, the different types, all the factors that influence it,
The better equipped you're going to be to actually manage it effectively.
100%.
It's like having that secret decoder ring for your own body.
I love that.
You can finally start to decipher those pain signals
Yeah.
and work with your body, not against it.
Exactly.
And as you continue on this journey of learning more about pain, because there's always more to learn.
Right.
Think about this. How might you approach your own pain differently?
That's a great question.
Or how might you be a better advocate for a loved one who is
yeah.
struggling with pain?
Yeah, that's such a great point.
And for our listeners who are ready to keep going on this journey, keep asking those curious questions.
We're going to link to all the resources that you sent us in the show notes. So that's specific pain conditions,
Okay.
assessment techniques, even tips on how to talk to your doctor more effectively.
Love it.
Because knowledge isn't just about understanding pain.
It's about empowering ourselves to live fuller, more vibrant lives.
Even when pain is a part of the journey.
Beautifully said.
So until next time, keep diving deep.